A number of senior Republicans in the US say they will support a second impeachment of President Trump a week before his term ends. Democrats are likely to push for a vote later on Wednesday. The execution has gone ahead of Lisa Montgomery, the first female inmate executed by the US federal government in nearly 70 years. She was convicted in 2007 of strangling a pregnant woman and cutting the fetus from her womb. The Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny will fly back to Russia on the 17th of January, having recovered from being poisoned. Navalny, who is one of the President Putin's leading critics, was airlifted to Germany for treatment in August after collapsing on a plane. Indonesia has begun a mass COVID vaccination program using the Chinese-made CoronaVac vaccine. President Widodo was the first person to receive the jab, which will initially protect key workers and the young.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei says Iran is not in a hurry to rejoin a 2015 nuclear deal, but demanded an end to restrictions on his country. The Indonesian government has released from prison a cleric suspected of planning the deadly 2002 bombing in Bali. In South Korea, a court orders Japan to pay 12 South Koreans for forced sex labor during World War II. Japan called the ruling unacceptable. And in Ivory Coast, opposition parties promised to take part in legislative elections on March 6th.
Lawmakers today plan to vote on whether to impeach President Trump over his role in last week's riot at the U.S. Capitol. This comes after Vice President Mike Pence said he would reject a resolution calling for him to use the 25th Amendment to remove Trump from office. Liz Cheney, the third-ranking House Republican, became the first member of the GOP leadership to say she would vote to impeach Trump. Democrats have enough votes to impeach him even without Republican support. YouTube joined the list of social media companies that have locked accounts tied to President Trump. The suspension came after the Google-owned platform removed videos that it said violated its policies against content it believes could incite violence. The U.S. reported over 4,300 people died from COVID-19 yesterday, a new all-time high according to Johns Hopkins University data. The CDC said all air travelers, including American citizens, flying to the U.S. will be required to show proof of a negative COVID-19 test before departing. The rule takes effect on January 26th. Investors today will be watching the latest U.S. consumer inflation numbers due out this morning, and Samsung is set to launch its new flagship Galaxy S21 smartphone later today.
We start with the coronavirus situation here in Japan. The government is expanding a state of emergency it recently declared for parts of the greater Tokyo region as the country battles its most serious wave of infections yet. The Prime Minister spoke to the media hours ago to explain the decision. He also called for greater public cooperation to contain the spread.
To put the current situation behind us as soon as possible, the people, the state, and local communities must be united and work toward a common goal, endure the restrictions on our lifestyle, and overcome this crisis. The government will do whatever it can to protect the lives and livelihoods of the people.
7 prefectures are being added nationwide. They're Osaka, Hyogo, Kyoto, Aichi, Gifu, Fukuoka, and Tochigi. The declaration originally took effect last Friday for Tokyo and 3 neighboring prefectures. It will remain in place until February 7th. The state of emergency is less strict in Japan than in many Western countries. People are asked to refrain from non-essential outings and help reduce the number of commuters by 70% by working from home. Restaurants and bars are asked to close early, and event venues are asked to limit attendance. Health authorities reported more than 5,800 new cases across Japan on Wednesday and a record 97 deaths. 900 people are in serious condition, another record high. The country has now logged more than 300,000 infections since the pandemic began. The governor of Osaka stressed the need to protect people's lives, regardless of the financial hardship anti-virus measures may cause.
People have suffered immense economic damage. I am very aware of this, but we must act now to stop the virus from spreading.
Reaction was mixed in the 7 added prefectures.
It's too late, isn't it? The government should have declared an emergency before the New Year holidays.
Each and every one of us must do what we can to protect essential workers. So the restriction is inevitable.
Bars and eateries are expecting a very tough few weeks. This restaurant manager in Tochigi Prefecture plans to close earlier, improve his takeout menu, and keep looking on the bright side.
It really is difficult to reduce our operating hours, but I still want customers to come and drink without hesitation over the next few months.
The government is also tightening border controls after new variants of the coronavirus were detected in the country. It plans to suspend an exemption that allows business people from 10 countries and Taiwan to enter Japan. The change will effectively ban all foreign travelers. Meanwhile, Japan is ramping up preparations to administer vaccines. The government says it hopes to begin inoculations by late February, but as our next story shows, people are split on whether they want to get vaccinated.
It's been a hectic few weeks at city offices across Japan. Many have set up teams dedicated to ensuring a smooth rollout, setting up reservation systems, establishing call centers, and selecting locations. But a recent NHK poll of nearly 1,300 people suggests not everyone is eager to roll up their sleeves. 50% say they want to get vaccinated, while nearly 40% say they don't. Along gender lines, men are more willing to get the shot, while women are less sure.
I'm constantly worried about getting the coronavirus, so I want to be vaccinated.
I'm afraid of the side effects from getting vaccinated. It was approved overseas quite quickly, so I'm concerned whether clinical trials were conducted properly.
The poll also shows older people appear to be more eager than their younger counterparts.
I'm scared because the virus is spreading so much. Getting vaccinated makes me feel safer. I'm worried about side effects, but I think they are rare.
A vaccine expert says he understands differing opinions among age groups.
Young people are not high risk, which makes them think they don't have to get vaccinated. Also, some people may want to wait a while because the safety of vaccines has not been proven over a long period.
Ishii says effective information campaigns will be crucial to help people overcome their hesitations.
It's been shown there are no particularly serious side effects from vaccinations in tens of thousands of people. It's clear that an increase in the vaccination rate will reduce the number of infections.
So far, the collaboration between Pfizer and BioNTech is the only one seeking government approval. While the hope is to start vaccinations by late next month, how many people will be lining up remains unclear.
India is getting ready to begin a nationwide vaccination drive this weekend against the coronavirus. Airlines began transporting more than 5.5 million doses of the vaccine on Tuesday. The first round of the shots are being delivered to distribution centers around the country. The AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine for local use is manufactured at an institute in the western city of Pune. Officials say about 30 million health and other frontline workers will be given priority. They'll be followed by around 270 million people older than 50 and other people at risk. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the move as a landmark step in India's fight against the virus. The country's drugs regulator recently approved emergency use of the AstraZeneca vaccine and another one developed by local firm Bharat Biotech. Ahead of the campaign, India conducted 2 dry runs to ascertain the best way to administer the vaccines and detect any logistical loopholes in their distribution. More than 10 million people in India have been infected with the virus. Only the United States has more cases. in the East China Sea, 4 Chinese government ships temporarily entered Japanese territorial waters off the Senkaku Islands. The intrusion took place on Wednesday. It was the first in the area this year by official Chinese vessels. The Japanese Coast Guard says the ships entered the waters in the morning. They cruised the area for about 2 hours before leaving Japanese waters. Japan controls the islands. China and Taiwan claim them. The Japanese government maintains they're an inherent part of Japan's territory in terms of history and international law, and that there's no issue of sovereignty to be resolved over them. China has been increasing its activities around the islands. Officials say that last year Chinese ships operated in the so-called contiguous zone just outside Japanese waters for a record 333 days. Japan is planning to increase its patrol ships to beef up security in the area. The administration of U.S. President Donald Trump has declassified an internal document outlining its strategy for the Indo-Pacific region, including China. It says the U.S. will defend the first island chain, which extends from the Japanese archipelago to the Philippines. The document approved by the Trump administration in February 2018 was made public on Tuesday. It says the U.S. will deny China sustained air and sea dominance inside the first island chain. The document also makes clear that the U.S. is committed to defending first island chain nations and territories, including Taiwan. It stresses that the U.S. aims to prevent Beijing's unfair trading practices and counterbalance the Chinese model of government by promoting initiatives that show the benefits of democracy and liberty. On North Korea, the U.S. objective is to maximize pressure on Pyongyang to convince the Kim regime that the only path to its survival is to relinquish its nuclear weapons. Observers say the release of the document days before President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration is aimed at encouraging the new administration to continue the policies of the Trump administration. Britain says it's going to tighten rules in order to rid its supply chain of products linked to the forced labor of Uyghurs in China.
We must take action to make sure that UK businesses are not part of the supply chains that lead to the gates of the internment camps in Xinjiang. We want a positive and a constructive relationship with China. We will work tirelessly towards that end. But we won't sacrifice our values or our security.
The Foreign Secretary says British companies will be required to check their supply chains to determine whether any of the goods or materials are linked to forced labor or to other rights violations. He says firms will be fined if they fail to carry out due diligence checks or report the results. Rob also says any supplier profiting from forced labor will be barred from government procurement. In Beijing, a spokesperson for China's foreign ministry denied the existence of forced labor. He added that the UK should immediately reverse its decision and stop interfering in the country's internal affairs. Britain has been stepping up its criticism of Beijing for human rights violations committed against Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Heavy rain and snow continue to impact the U.S. Pacific Northwest. Our meteorologist Jonathan Oh has a look at the situation in world weather.
Hello, the Pacific Northwest has been getting a real battering of waves of rain over the past several days, and we are also seeing some snow into the Rockies as well. The radar loop showing us that over a 12-hour period, persistent rainfall, and that will continue to be the story as we go throughout Wednesday into Thursday. We will see yet another pattern as we see essentially moisture going around and pushing its way toward the east. We might get a little bit of a break as we go into part of the day on Thursday, but then rain comes back into the picture, so that pattern will continue to linger. And we will see rain and snow up to the upper Midwest as we have a low pressure system crossing across Canada down to